What do these people have in common? They're all residents of America's 51st state, Poverty, USA.
Good evening. We are the Save St. Francis Xavier group. We've been interested for some time in the buildings at St. Francis Xavier Parish. We have formed a foundation which is dedicated to keeping that campus intact and not losing any buildings. That's called the Xavier Foundation. We have a website, xavierfoundation.net. I'm Tom Moylan. I'm a retired physician. I'll let the other members of our panel today introduce themselves. We have Tim Bernard. Tim?
Hello, my name's Tim Bernard. I've lead carpenter, and I've built a few projects around town. One you might be familiar with is the skating rink out at the fairgrounds. I was the primary ramrod behind that. And I've done some other projects. I worked on at Dragon's Hollow, and I've been working on this project for about 6 years now. Things move pretty slow within the church. But we have a good project, and we'll get back to it in a little while. And we'll lay out some of the specifics on it so you can take a look at it for yourself. We have generated a matrix where we show side by side a couple different options. One option is what they're proposing to do, which is to tear down this 30,000 square foot beautifully built school that is paid for, to build a building that is 1/4 the size for over $1 million.
Thank you, Tim, very much. And Gloria?
Hello, my name is Gloria Rourke, and I'm a homemaker.
Go ahead.
Pardon?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm a homemaker and retired businesswoman, and I have 2 children and 5 grandchildren. And my 2 children are graduates of the Catholic schools, and my younger son went through St. Joseph's School in particular. And my background in business is in the building supply area, ready-mix concrete, blocks, brick, anything related to building. And I just have some nice memories of these schools as my children were growing up, and the community that welcomed me when I moved here from Pennsylvania. And I'd like to talk to you about some ideas later on what we could do to use these buildings and benefit the local community. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria, very much. And we're honored to have with us also this evening Dr. Gregorio Miranda Miro. Dr. Miranda Miro holds 2 degrees from the University of Havana, Cuba. I've talked a little bit to him, and he has seen old buildings. Is that so, Gregorio?
Yes. As you can see, my name is Gregorio Miranda. I'm coming now from Wisconsin. I am very happy to stay here in St. Francis Xavier Foundation. And I think that what is doing the foundation is very good for the community and very good and nice for the health of every single person from the community.
Thank you, Gregorio.
You're welcome.
And yes, and so we have some interesting things. We have, excuse me, and we will share it with you. Some footage that that has come to us from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, which has a specific goal of ending poverty in America. That's a big job, but they do point out that 1 out of 6 people in this country is below the poverty line. And you'll see on their footage that it's brief, but you'll see that 1 out of 6 people in America makes for an entire nation of the poor within an otherwise prosperous nation. And that becomes important because the neighborhood that we're in here, the north side of Missoula, the poverty rates among children are over 40%. So later we will go to some of that video footage. But for now, Tim, you had mentioned the idea of a builder's matrix, a decision matrix, and why don't you fill us in a little?
Well, to help people to understand things, you know, being a builder for over 20 years, it's hard for people to really conceptualize ideas and to put them onto paper and to make them a reality. That's one of the hardest things. And what you're looking at now is what we call a decision matrix. And right at the very top, you'll see the costs. And we've had a lot of people, interest from the university and other groups, of doing a lot of plays and different things there.
Well, thank you, Tim. That's a sort of a summary, and I just might tell our audience that Tim and we're like yin and yang on this. He's the...
Hey, just a minute, Tom. Let's keep going. Why we're involved in this. Now, as we move on down, we've covered the size. Let's get a little more into the size of this. There's a full kitchen and a gymnasium. The new building will not have a gymnasium, and it will not be replaced. Now, there'll be no income as we go down to the third item on the matrix. There's no income from the new building. In the existing building, one of the options we're looking at is there's a second floor with about 7,000 square feet. We've had several firm offers to rent that out. We're looking at about a $40,000 to $50,000 positive cash flow from renting out that second floor. Now, to replace that, as we look at the net worth, the new building will only be worth about $1 million, the cost of building it.
Okay.
The existing building right now is physically worth at least $2 million. And if we spent just a little bit of money, we're talking $3 to $4 million. If we spent what they're proposing to spend, which is $1 million, if we spent $1 million rehabbing this building, we'd have a building that is worth $4 to $6 million. And that's what it would cost to replace this building on the open market. And you wouldn't get as solid of a structure. Now, the things that we can do here are, and that's what we're going to get into now next in the next segment, for the community to come together and to actually do something for the poor. And with the doctors here that are retired, one of the things we're looking at is putting in a free clinic there. We're also looking at subsidized to free daycare, and this is for anyone, not just Christian people, but for anyone who would qualify. We'd have a safe place for subsidized to free daycare. And how are we going to pay for it? We're going to pay for it with the rent that comes in from the upstairs. And this is something that the community can get behind, and we can actually do something for our community.
Well, thanks, Tim. And you know, there are some other powerful elements out there that make this feasible, and that is we have this mix of the faith-based parish there, the Catholic parish, with the great tradition of the Catholic Church in serving people over so many years. We have a neighborhood. We've mentioned the need in the neighborhood. Over 40% of the kids living in poverty there. And we have a university nearby, about a 15-minute walk from the university. And so that combination, or a short bus ride, whatever. And so that combination makes a very powerful mix of factors for bringing in granting. Gregorio, you are there in, you know Havana, and you know the University of Havana.
Yes.
And are there buildings? How old are the buildings in Havana?
Well, there are many buildings very old. Some of them have also almost 100 years. But there are some other buildings of new constructions. And the contrast is very interesting because we have in the university and all around the university, which is the Havana Center town, old buildings, and some of them are very new buildings too.
Well, and then I was thinking of some of the footage. They always take you to the wharves and, with cameras or movies, to those old, the fortresses and things Down by the waterfront?
Well, the fortress are more than 250, maybe 300 years.
There you, yeah. And that's the same brick masonry construction
Right.
there. And there it is 300 years. And I don't think Havana is thinking of tearing those down.
Right.
Because when the tourists do come back to Havana, they're going to want to see the fortress.
Oh, yes.
And yes, and everything. So, Gloria, you I think you mentioned to us that you had grown up in the building trades. Your dad had a concrete.
Right, I did, and the quality of materials at that time, I feel, were far superior to what we have today available to us. And these buildings, St. Joseph's and Loyola schools that are in question and in jeopardy, are so structurally solid. And by neglect, we are really losing, and it really enhances the whole community. It's part of the history of Missoula. And there's a lot to be said for those people who constructed it and sacrificed and built it. And there were happy times there when the children were in school, and it was a nice gathering place, and Bash was held there. And I'd like to see it turned into a real neighborhood community service for people within walking distance. The city has grown so much, and if people are on a fixed budget, they cannot afford gas to drive across town. They cannot afford various programs, but there's so much we could do there in teaching computer skills, any kind of skills, gym, intramural games, fun things for people to gather in the community, seniors, young people, and that's what Catholics have always been known for, is serving their brothers and sisters, doing the good works, and we've got a long history of that. So I'm hoping all of our listeners and viewers will start writing letters to us, and we'll get them to the appropriate people. And our name and our website are on the screen at various times, and you can also write to the bishop and express your views. But we need your support. We need to hear from you, and we need to act now.
And I might mention to you, do tune in to our program. If you've missed previous programs, they are being shown every Tuesday, at least for the present, being shown every Tuesday at 4:30. Every Tuesday at 4:30 in the afternoon. And so do tune in. There's a number of interesting issues on the table. One is that the Catholic bishops have funded our neighborhood, specifically the Northside CDC, Community Development Corporation, there on the north side to the tune of $100,000 with the specific goal of creating a food co-op. And we do have a commercial kitchen that the Catholic bishops, and we know this from a personal meeting over in Helena, that the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, it's an arm of the Catholic bishops, and the people with that Catholic campaign do feel that our kitchen could be a very positive factor in the efforts for a food co-op, in that you could serve hot meals out of there for working people, for working families, and run a culinary arts teaching program in the process. So these are suggestions that have been on the table. I started to mention that Tim and I are like yin and yang but I will throw this out, we have great hopes that the idea of demolishing is receding into the sunset, but we don't know that. And we have great hopes. One thing I will say that the committees at the church have all been in favor of taking a serious look at uses and putting this building to work. And I will mention them. That is the parish council. 11 out of 12 asked that we do work with our university to find uses. The finance committee asked likewise. And then the building committee, although it originally voted to demolish, several months later on further investigation did carry a vote on a unanimous vote. It's a unanimous vote. It is in the minutes of the building committee for April of 2002 to very specifically repair the roof so that water damage could not continue in that building. Well, there are players in this, and we don't know where it's going. We do know that there's a handful of people that like new things, they like new buildings. Well, it's been, it's been interestingly been referred to as an old, used-up building, but as Gregorio has pointed out, and has been pointed out on this program before by James Weir and others, it's really a young building. It's just at the beginning of a useful life that could be 1,000 years.
As we look around Missoula, take a look at all the old buildings that have been refurbished and around the country. If you're familiar with what goes on around the country, there's tons of old buildings that after they fall into disrepair, then some people come along with a little bit of ingenuity and a little bit of spark and some life, and they turn it into beautiful living quarters, brand new. I mean, this has happened all over the country.
Well, speaking of all over the country, I think this is a good chance to break and go to the Catholic Bishop's video from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. It's brief. Stay with us. We'll be right back, but it is very interesting material. And so with that said, we'll be right back. Thank you, folks.
What do these people have in common? They're all residents of America's 51st state, Poverty, USA. There are 34 million people living there, almost as many as live in California. 1/6 of all of America's children live there, a higher percentage than most industrialized nations. Many of its residents work full-time, 2 jobs, or even 3, and still can barely make ends meet.
Poverty is hopelessness. Poverty is an experience when there seems to be no way out of a set of conditions. For a person that experiences poverty, his or her situation is so bad, so bleak, that they have very little options left.
There's always been a human impulse to extend a helping hand to the poor, but it is not as common to work with them to overcome poverty for a lifetime. Yet that is a ministry with biblical roots.
Jesus' ministry was a ministry in which he moved along and among the people. He didn't ask them where they lived. He didn't ask them what their financial background was. He simply asked them, would they be made whole? If you were blind, he would make them see. If they were hungry, he would feed them. And so we are compelled to do the same thing.
Often these programs are run by small local churches and other groups. Their funds are tight, and crucial support comes from national organizations like the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. Founded in 1970, the campaign has been a leader in developing this kind of innovative self-help program. The campaign has funded more than 4,000 programs over the years, distributing more than $260 million.
I think it's important for people in the United States to realize that poverty is right in their own backyards, and that we can solve poverty for a lifetime by getting involved in working with people who are living in poverty to find local solutions, to help them to find opportunities for better jobs with living wages, to help them find ways to improve their local educational institutions so that their children don't have to go through the pain and suffering that they have faced through their lifetimes, and to bring new hope and a new life to communities.
Okay, so we're back, and I think there would be some commentary on some of that material that you've just seen about what the Catholic bishops are doing about that poverty community in America. Gloria?
Well, I wanted to add to what Tim was saying, and then you could probably elaborate on that part. These buildings, the whole block is nominated on the for the Historic Register, National Historic Register. The church already is in the rectory, and so that's a special designation. I belong to the Garden Club, and I can visualize with some specific landscaping and gardening on top of the roofs. They're flat. These buildings will only even more appreciate with some care. There's been neglect, and if we roll up our sleeves, and all those people that did build it, and there's got to be a lot of relatives of these people who were involved in building these schools, need to get involved. Bad things happen when good people sit back and don't do anything, so we're urging you to get involved, get a hold of us, write letters, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Gloria. And you will see, you'll see our foundation name, our website, the phone number, 531-2394. And I will say this. In a survey that we've taken of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in this town, we have found that only 1 out of 20, in other words, let me put it another way, 19 out of 20 feel that we should move ahead and get these buildings in use for our community. We've been approached by the Symphony Orchestra, we've been approached by the University of Montana, we've been approached by 2 new groups. One was the hopes of having a chess tournament in the auditorium in April. Another group is in hopes of running children's programs out of the building. We can only hope and pray that, that building, believe me, and Tim will second me on that, it can be up and running tomorrow, especially with the weather warming up. There's no heat in it, but we can be using it tomorrow. Tim?
Absolutely. I've walked through it with, well, let's take a look at the hard, cold facts, is that St. Patrick's Hospital was using it up until their new building was completed. They're hardly look for the cheapest place in town. These people are a top-rate, top-notch organization in town. They wouldn't have had their administrative staff in the buildings for 3 years if there was something wrong with the buildings.
That's absolutely
Now,
right.
there's just a little bit of upgrade we'd like to do. We'd like to put in some new buildings. There's cosmetic stuff. It needs some paint. But it's very, very low-cost stuff. Actually, we have a firm bid from not a low-cost contractor in town that would equal, for the price of demolition, we can put a brand-new roof over the whole building. We can sprinkle the building, which would be a huge upgrade. We can put in a bunch of new windows on the few windows that need to be replaced, some new bathrooms, and some new doors. And then it's just a matter of painting the place. And we have plenty of organizations that have approached us, the Knights of Columbus, and there's plenty of other civic groups. There's a lot of people that like to do the little work. It was like when Dragon's Hollow got built. There's hundreds of people showed up for that because a lot of people can come out and push the paintbrush and do the little things. But this is the part that people really don't like, and it's the political part. And there's just a few people on the other side. And all we have to do is if a bunch of us would just get together and let them know that we want to use this building for our community, for our children. We care about our children, and we want to do something for our children. There's no real teen center where kids can go on the weekend and be safe, listen to some Christian bands, listen to some Christian music. We need to change our society, and it starts by one little step. All you have to do is make a phone call, write a letter. That's all you have to do. With a bunch of little people, it's like building that 30,000 square foot building. It's built with a bunch of little bricks. If one person has to carry all those bricks and lay all those bricks, it takes a long time. But if 1,000 people each pick up a brick, that building will be built in a short period of time.
Well, that's a good point, and that was just illustrated by that brick street repair project. Everybody turned out, and they picked up bricks, and I think we'll go into that more on our next program. But this amazing activity that people do turn out, and they do work. And I was just going to make a little case for our campus there being in a sense the soul of Missoula. Now, the neighborhood here that we are sitting in, the town is divided into multiple neighborhoods for the neighborhood project, but this neighborhood we sit in here is called the heart of Missoula, the downtown. But also, there's a case to be made for that campus being the soul of Missoula. It has roots back in the introduction of Christianity into Montana. The first Christian faith to come into Montana was brought in by Father Ravalli, and by, of Ravalli County fame, and by Father DeSmet. And that was, interestingly, at the request of a Native American named Ignace Lamoose, who, with a band of 20 Iroquois, came and who had already been Catholic for 200 years, came here and with the Hudson Bay Company and told the Native Americans here about the black robes. And the black robes, ultimately, these are essentially Jesuit buildings here. Were built, and they were built for the schools. They're Catholic school buildings. And so let's get them back in use. Gloria, you?
Well, I would just like to say that we need to be good stewards of everything that we have in the environment. And as I've said before, there's been a lot of sacrifice to put the buildings up, and I think one of the problems that we have encountered is the group of people that are making decisions and stopping us from moving forward is that they probably like contemporary architecture. But these buildings, all the buildings are known as the Catholic Block. They're part of Montana history, not just Missoula. And it belongs to the whole city, whether you're Catholic or not. My husband is not Catholic, and he is very upset that there's any thought of these buildings being torn down. It's important for everybody to come forward. So I just can't urge you about the importance. We're wasting time, and the longer they go neglected and uncared for, the worse it will be.
Well,
but we've lost money. In 2 years, we've lost a lot of income that we could have used and we could have served in our community far better. So it's just been very poor business management, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out.
Well, yeah, as we look at that, if they're so dead set on building a new structure, which we're not against, there's plenty of places and there's plenty of even Catholic property to build their new structure. But no businessman would tear down a perfectly good building, especially not a multi-million-dollar building, and then replace it with something that doesn't generate any income, won't do anything. It does nothing to promote, to serve the people, which is what we're supposed to be doing as a church, is to serve the people. It just doesn't pencil out. As the matrix clearly shows, when you take a look side by side with what we have and what they're proposing, I mean, who wants to pay for that? I mean, somewhere this money comes from someplace.
Well, and that would create a debt. I think a lot of people are thinking, well, tear down the buildings and put up a new building, because a lot of people like everything in nice, neat packages, but there will also be a debt, that the people of the church are going to have to pick up now. In all candor, do you want that? I think all of us are struggling paying our bills. Do we need another debt and not have any part in making that decision?
Gloria, precisamente,
Yes, Gloria.
exactly. We need to reduce this quantity of a lot of people, and we need, through us, teach to the community that we need to save this building. And if we save this building, the triumph is for the community. And if the triumph is for the community, will be a great thing for this city, Missoula, and for all the state.
Well, that's a very good point, and I heard you mention children, and it really is a children's building, and I think you can probably, as you viewers, and I know there are many of you out there, and you can probably detect some urgency. Well, we really feel that an unused building is in great danger. What are the dangers? Well, it's that loss of forward movement. It's that concern, is there a loss of imagination on the part of those making these decisions? And so we have worked actively and supportively and loyally to be that imagination, to be that hope. And Tim, perhaps you could tell a little bit about the proposal that we've made to go ahead and operate the buildings.
Yeah, we've made a proposal that would cover. What we want to do is cover the cost. There actually was a contract about 6 years ago when the buildings. There was a group, the St. Pat's Hospital offered $1.5 million for these buildings, and then I was in contact with our pastor at the time, and I said, listen, these things are worth a lot of money, a lot more than that, and especially a lot more than that as to be used for ourselves, for a community center, for operating just a myriad of programs that we can do. Because one of the largest costs anyone has from doing a project is your overhead. And the primary overhead is a place to do it. It's really tough, especially here we are in February, even though it's a very nice February, it's really tough to do projects, whether it's daycare or whatever, outside in a parking lot. You need a warm enclosure where you can have books, videos, and a gymnasium, and all the things that we need.
Well, yeah, thanks, Tim. And, another entity here, or another group, you could say, who owns these buildings? I mean, is it the diocese? They hold the deed. Is it the parish? They make the decisions. But, who occupied them for 75 years? The Missoula Catholic Schools. Heck, Gloria, your kids went there. My kids went there, and my daughter even taught there. So the Catholic schools have asked from time to time to be in them, and I do believe that, it's possible that that'll happen. I don't know. This whole thing with the Roosevelt School and all leaves everything up in the air. And the Catholic school kids are, gosh, they're in there, they're going till 9 o'clock at night, because they only have the one gym. And, from what I hear, I think that, this gym could very well serve them also. It's solid. It's been declared solid by 3 teams of architects and engineers. Why can't the Catholic schools come back in and use these a little bit? And I'm not saying these other programs, these after-school programs, these summer school programs, heck, that building could be in use 24 hours a day. I mean, goodness, the police officers, we happen to be in the city hall here, and here's the police officers across the hall, and we've got the fire department. They used to be playing ball in there and working out in that gym 3 in the morning. So that building could be in use 24 hours a day.
But when you take a look and put it on paper, let's put it on paper and let's compare the stuff, and let's get something done for our children.
There have been misperceptions at every turn. And I think that, on the other hand, that, I'd just like to ask this question. The first question to ask is, could we ever build this building again? I've talked to a builder that told me to build it the way it's built would be $10 million. Of course, new methods are different, and the buildings are different that you come out with. But to build this building as it's built, $10 million. So can we build, here's a question, these are rhetorical, but can we ever build St. Peter's Cathedral again in Rome? Can we ever build the Eiffel Tower again in Paris? And can we ever rebuild St. Francis campus once we start tearing it down? I think there's been real concern that, when the buildings start going down on St. Francis campus, ultimately the church will be lost too. I think there's been a serious concern about that. Gregorio, you've been in a country that's not wealthy. Cuba is not a wealthy country, but you've been the beneficiary of education that's brought you not 1 but 2 doctoral degrees. And you started out in a small part of, was it a small town in Cuba?
No, I was born in the city of Havana. We have in the city almost 2 million people. And I was studying in the University of Havana, which is in, how I told you, in Havana Center Town.
Now you had but you have Jesuit parishes there.
Oh yes, we have Jesuit parish, and we have a Jesuit community, and we have now great improvement where the government is asking desperately to the priests for research and cooperation with some research at the university.
Well, do you think the Jesuit fathers in Havana would ever leave this building empty?
Never, never. I think that they will never leave this building empty, and we need to teach to our priests here in Missoula and all professors from the university, Montana State University, and some other hospitals and clinics and schools around the building, that we need to understand that this building could save life if we use the building in a good way, where we can improve family values, we can improve school values in our children's. And we can
absolutely.
improve
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Yes.
leisure values
Yeah, Tim?
Mother,
Well, that's
in general in the population.
Yeah.
Mother
right.
Teresa always felt to treat people with dignity. And just because people don't have money, I'm sorry, thank you, Tim. He keeps an eye on me in the microphone. We need to treat people with dignity because it's just the good grace of God that we're not there. And I skirted poverty for a while, and it isn't any fun. And that doesn't mean that you're not intelligent. It's just a misfortune, whether it's a divorce or sickness in the family, loss of a job. It can happen to anyone. Money comes and goes. But the important thing is to treat people with dignity at all times, no matter what your station in life is.
Right, and absolutely, and to get back to the family values and to instill a good education in people, that's what we're really looking at here with our after-school programs and also with our daycare center. We can get people in and not, we'll have a very good curriculum at the that establishes some values of decency, treating people right. Instead of watching Looney Tunes and stuff, we'll have videos and cartoons with Bible stories, so that people will begin to learn about our faith, about the world. This is real. What's going on? This is how it's done, one person at a time. Just like I said, you don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to go to church. But the cartoons that you'll see will be people helping other people. They'll have good values. There'll be positive stories. There'll be the stories right from the Bible that the earth was built upon. And it's something that'll be affordable. There's a lot of people, single parent families, that they don't have a lot of money. They're going to school. There's a lot of people that we know that go to school and have children. They're looking for a place for their kids to go to interact with other kids in a safe environment where they'll learn positive values to become good stewards in our society. And it's as adults, all of us, it's our responsibility to get involved and to do something, whether it's just making a phone call, writing a letter. There's a lot of little things that you can do from your house. You don't have to leave your home even to write a letter to our parish and say, let's take a hard look at turning this into a community center for the good of the community. Show us the numbers. Let's take a look at it. Let's do something for everyone, not for just a few people's vanity.
Well, yeah, Tim, and before we do switch over to that next second segment from the Catholic bishops, and do stay with us, I might just mention something that can happen in any neighborhood. It can go both ways, and it's called the tipping point. And what happens is if you do something major, say, for instance, a neighborhood has problems of any sort, poverty being among them or need, and you bring in something like a community center, it can be a factor in staying on the good side of the tipping point. It works both ways, of course, and you can lose something like say, a Catholic campus or any part of a Catholic campus, or for that matter, any faith and its buildings, such as the only other organization on this side of the river that really of this type is the Methodist Church over across from the library. And they make themselves, their facilities are available constantly to our community for various uses, you know. And actually our church does host, and has hosted many things in the past, but hosted the first night celebration by having music groups in the church. But so the template is there, the model is there. Let's go over and see what the Catholic bishops have to say in the second part of this video. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We'll be right back. Thank you.
One of the most powerful forces in Camden today is Camden Churches Organized for People. CCOP, as it's known, is a community organizing group that seeks to increase the city's quality of life. Starting in 1996, with the help of the Campaign for Human Development, CCOP set its sights on Camden's housing crisis and the far-reaching effects of abandoned housing.
This is their house, their home, and that is a really important sort of social factor of home ownership. It allows us a sense of permanence.
Transformations like these show the power of grassroots action and the importance of empowerment in stopping the cycle of poverty. One of the greatest contributing factors to crime, low incomes, and gang violence in South Central Los Angeles, a public education system that Newsweek has called the worst in America.
Education is probably the single most critical divide between a lifetime of poverty and the opportunity to escape poverty. If you drop out of high school, you are looking at a lifetime of poverty almost for sure.
In the state of California, they use third grade testing scores to determine how many prison beds they'll need in the future. So if you can't get an education, this state has taken the stance that by the time you reach third grade and you're not reading, we might as well prepare a prison bed for you.
And so we decided to do something about it. That something was the GED initiative.
The GED initiative is based on a simple idea that education is the best way to break the cycle of recidivism.
They contacted me through someone saying, you talk about crime prevention, not just putting people in prison, but prevention. Our idea is let's make it a condition of their parole that they work toward their GED equivalent. And when they hit me with that, I thought that was a marvelous idea.
By empowering themselves, the poor take control of their own destinies. That's a critical part of grassroots anti-poverty work, no matter what the location, whether the streets of the South Bronx or the wide open deserts of southern New Mexico.
We could not have made the kinds of strides that we made, particularly in the startup phase, without the kind of support and funding and grant making that organizations like the Campaign for Human Development have made.
By challenging the local culture in that sense, we have brought the low-income community to the table, whether that be in education or health care or job training or water.
Too many times in the United States we look for the fast solutions, and often we find that those solutions don't last. The Catholic Campaign for Human Development is not into fast solutions. We're into working and building relationships in local communities to find the long-term solutions. We want to end poverty not just for a day, but for a lifetime.
Our job is to make a difference in someone's life, to take them out of the darkness of despair into the light of opportunity and hopefulness.
We're back with you. You've been able to view some of that material from other areas of the country, from Los Angeles, from other areas where programs have been invested in. Interestingly, the Catholic bishops do not the Catholic bishops do not necessarily at all invest in Catholic programs. They look for programs that are effective. If they happen to be Catholic, so be it. If they're other faiths are doing good things and moving ahead, it's kind of like the faith-based initiatives. They do move ahead in that direction, and they do help fund those. An example being, of course, the funding that the North Side Community Development Corporation has received here, $100,000 toward a food co-op. Bozeman has a food co-op, I might mention. And so we are, this is just a good opportunity. We're approaching the wrap-up time, but I do want to say thank you to the panel here and to each person here on this panel for, in effect, stepping out of your, Gregorio, Gloria, Tim, for stepping out of your comfort zone.
Thank you.
You bet. And it's not easy to to go ahead and create. But then I'd like to thank each of you viewers too for stepping out of your comfort zone, tuning in, and not tuning out. Just think about these things, say prayers, and come out for the meetings when they happen at the parish or wherever. The idea that we have a precious resource, as somebody put it interestingly, you almost envision this, as if it came from outer space, this marvelous gift we've been given by previous generations, sitting there. And you know how when spaceships come in from outer space, what do? They sit there and they sort of go, they pulsate, wang, 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 and it's just sitting there pulsating, saying, come on into me, use me. Don't leave me empty, Tim.
Well, along that line, you were out in Washington looking for some funding and stuff, and when they found out that we already had a building, they said, you're 90% of the way there. And you are. If you've ever done a project, to have this building that is paid for. We don't owe any money. The building is paid for.
Mention the skating rink, Tim, a little bit about what happened there.
To develop property.
It went on for like 3 years or something, right? That it was just sitting still.
That's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother story. But that's why I'm so passionate about this, because this is so easy. The building is there. To try to raise the money to build this building, compared to the fraction that we'd have to, and actually we don't even have to raise any money, because as I've shown in the decision matrix, we can have a positive cash flow that will cover the minor repairs that need to be done, and then will help to offset the costs of this free to subsidized daycare that we'd like to get going. Also a teen center for the weekends, having Christian music and or Christian DJs coming in, and the possibilities are endless.
Well, no, and the interesting thing is some of these folks that we're dealing with, or that have some say-so over this, are actually people that know Seattle pretty well. And I'm going to say right here and now, Seattle has CYO. Well, what is CYO? Well, most everybody Catholic, and many that aren't Catholic, not only grew up with the CYO in Montana, and I've talked to various community leaders that, CYO was here. And why is that important? Because a lot of you out there viewing or whatever, and you may not have even been Catholic at the time, or you may not still be Catholic, but you would go to CYO dances, or you'd play athletics in CYO leagues. It was not limited to Catholics ever in Montana or in Omaha, where I grew up, but it was a great opportunity because you get into college, and we had access to basketball floors, so we could keep our basketball leagues going after high school. But they have out in Seattle CYO in every parish, and it's exactly CYO. Catholic Youth Organization runs exactly the type of programs we're running. The Catholic Diocese of, or Archdiocese of Seattle actually has a specific CYO, Office of CYO activities. If you attend Mass at parishes in Seattle, you will hear CYO activities talked about from the parish, or at least meet with Joe or Sue or Bob out in the back about the upcoming CYO dance, you know? And so it makes a you know, an activity-centered parish. And that's our dream, is to get back to that. We've had it in the past. You know, we've had that in the past. The things we're talking about have all been done here. Basketball leagues, dances, the Greek dinners, the Boy Scout breakfast, it's all been done here in the past, you know, and all we're saying is let's get moving and do it again. Let's you know, why be dead in the water? What do you say, Gregorio? Is it good to be dead in the water?
No.
Gregorio's looking for, you know, he's looking.
I think that one of the things that we can gain with this building is leisure values in our children and our young people, which sometimes they don't, most of the young people, they don't know how to enjoy the free time in a healthy form. And we have the possibility to teach, to help them in a good way how to gain in good things free times.
Gregorio, you know, I love to listen to Gregorio. He's got this wonderful Cuban accent.
Thank you.
It's a wonderful Cuban accent, and it's so fun to hear. And I just like to think how many of us could speak this well and go on television to a Spanish audience.
Very good.
My hat is off to you, Gregorio.
Thank
truly,
you very much.
Truly. It really is. My hat is off to you. And so we're approaching our wrap-up time, but you know, there's so many more things to think about and to say here.
Well, that's because, you know, quite frankly, there is no limit. The only limit is what others are placing upon us. And what we're saying is, if you don't want to do something, that's fine. But then let those who want to do the work, let us work and let us help people. You know, it doesn't, we have such an opportunity. And I wish you'd get involved and get a hold of the Xavier Foundation or get a hold of the church and let them know that you're interested in having a community center and doing something for the community.
Well, you know what we've had here is actually we've kind of been part of the history of this because the Xavier Foundation was founded earlier in the process, and we do know that there have been we're approaching 30 now. 30 entities, social service of various types that have asked to use this building, this St. Francis Xavier School. 30. And the reason that that becomes important is because one of those is the Montana Institute for Child Development. And Gregorio, you made some interesting connections earlier when you connected that campus as a Catholic campus sitting next to a Catholic hospital in association with a public university. But all of the above, what a mix, you know, call it magic. But, you know, it would be magic.
It would be great.
Yes, it would be great, as Gregorio says. And I would like to refer momentarily as we, you know, and I'd like to go to the rest of the panel too, but, you know, and not be, you know, but I do want to mention or repeat that idea that was in the Catholic Bishop's video, and that is that those third grade testing scores in Los Angeles are an absolute predictor for the number of prison beds that'll be needed 15 years from now. Okay? So we have no choice, you know? It's our school or the reform school. Hey, it's Yale or jail. So, you know, let's get in, let's work with our kids, let's give them something better to do. Somebody has said, hey, that's street kids. Well, sure it is. But heck, I was one of them. I was a street kid, and I grew up poor. Tim?
Well, one way or another, you're going to deal with the different parts of our community. And it's better to have, the more we can become interact with each other, the more we'll understand each other, and the more we'll work together to have a good, positive community. And to let this building go to waste would just be a shame.
Yeah. Were you ever a street kid? Is that the side of Havana you grew up on? Were you street kids?
Oh, yes.
He was street kids, so you could see it. You know, when you come up that way, Gloria, were you street kids?
I was an angel.
Ah,
Always have been.
She helped run her, don't let anybody kid you, she helped run her dad's concrete yard.
Yeah, I kind of
So
was a tomboy.
She dealt with those tough construction guys come in, but Gloria could deal with them, I think, and people are finding that out, that Gloria is a force in this, and that's what we need. We need forceful women, we need forceful men, and that's all we need to do is move again ahead as a church, is get our force back. You know, when we were over in Italy, we got to see, you remember when it was Roberto Benigni was up for Academy Awards, you know, for that movie, well, for all of his Beautiful Life, yeah, and all of his work. And it said on the posters said two words. It'd have a picture of him, and it would say, or wouldn't even necessarily be a picture, just the two words, Roberto Forza. Roberto Forza. You know, and it's sort of like, may the force be with you. And that's all I can say to us, to our foundation, to our Catholic Church, to our St. Francis Xavier Parish. May the force be with us. And with that, we thank you very much for...
Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you very much, Gregorio. Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you, Tom, and Gregorio. And thank you.
And we'll, with that, we will sign off, and may the force be with us. Good night.
Good closing.
Good night.